Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin Butenhoff coming to you live from our studio in downtown Waukesha. You can always join the show, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842, or leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter. We have a busy show lined up today. Greg Bach, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio will be joining us at 10:33. And then coming up at 11:33, of course, there is a big primary election today in Wisconsin. The polls are open. You have until 8 o'clock tonight to cast your ballots. And on your ballots, there are two statewide referendums that would essentially change the state constitution. So if you're confused about what those referendum mean, and what effects this would have, stick around at 11:33. We are going to do a little rerun of an interview that we did with Deb Cronmiller from the League of Women Voters. And she did a really good explanation of what these referendum would do, what they would mean, just how murky are they, because that's the concern, at least over referendum number two. So we're going to do that rerun with Deb Cronmiller coming up at 11:33. Wanted to start out, though. Oh, hey, don't forget.
What?
Download the Civic Media app.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
It is.
And Brewers home opener is today.
How could you tell?
Twins, because you're all out in your Brewers attire. If you're watching on the live stream, you can see he's got just about everything as Brewers. Brewers home opener. They're hosting the Minnesota Twins at 2:35. You can listen on News from the Center, WRCE in Richland Center, and WRJN in Racine, 99.9 FM, 1400 AM, and in Kenosha, catch the game on 98.1 FM. Again, Brewers home opener today, hosting the Minnesota Twins at 2:35. Their pitch goes out about 3:10.
3:10. And if you see me down there, I'm wearing a Lorenzo Kane jersey with a Brew Crew shirt underneath it, wearing a gray Brewers hat. I have long hair. I look like I ate all the hot dogs at the stadium. If you see me, be like, "What's up, Greg?" And if it's another guy, they're not going to respond to you.
There's going to be quite a few Civic Media folks at today's game.
I should bring something, like Civic Media something. And if you find me, it's like a little prize.
Oh, good luck. All right, our friend Dan Schaefer joins us every Friday from the recompopulation area.
Yeah,
and he did also, speaking of explaining what these two referendum are and what they mean. One of Dan's recent columns was about exactly this.
Mm-hmm.
These two referendum on the ballot, everyone's going to have it today. They would effectively change the Wisconsin state constitution. So this is important. But on Twitter, Derek Van Orden, our friend.
Oh, no, your friend.
From Western Wisconsin. Derek Van Orden posting on Dan Schaefer's Twitter feed, a reporter, in quotes, a reporter telling people how to vote. Are the people not smart enough to read? Your elitist, condescending attitude towards regular Americans is why your rag is going out of business. He actually just won 3 more Milwaukee Press Club awards. So
also, I didn't realize that Derek Van Orden was born in the 30s. Your rag's going under, boy.
He says vote yes on question 1 and question 2 to make sure billionaires like Zuckerberg can't buy elections in Wisconsin. That's not what had happened. As for the activist reporter, kick rocks.
I'm going to tell you something, another thing, kid. I'm going to take you down and get your girl. She can be my girl.
Kick rocks. Is he 12?
Is he not a sitting congressman in the United States House of Representatives?
It's unreal.
He is just embarrassing. And he's you know what, even worse, he's exhausting because he doesn't there are no consequences. And I'm not saying like consequences in like crime type consequences, but it doesn't matter who responds back. I respond to him all the time. I shouldn't. It's not good for my mental health. But those amendments, first of all, have nothing to do with quote unquote Zuckerbucks. You made up that term. It's a stupid term.
Yes.
And also, one amendment deals with outside election funding. The other one deals with staffing. You don't even know about them because you are the quote unquote congressman who is well informed.
Well, and which leads us to our next subject, because again, He's like, are people not smart enough to read? DVO, you might want to start with yourself.
Right?
You caught this before we went on the air yesterday.
Yeah.
And now there's a big headline in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel from Hope Carnop.
Please read it in this in the tone it's meant.
No, in-person absentee voting can't take place on Monday before Election Day in Wisconsin.
Do you hear that, folks? They're trying to take away your right to vote.
Republican Derek Van Orden, representing Western Wisconsin on April 1st, wrote on Twitter, quote, get out and vote in person absentee today at your clerk's office or in person tomorrow at your designated polling station, unquote. Little thing here. Wisconsin's presidential primary today, early voting was only offered through March 31st, which was Sunday.
We all make mistakes, right? I've said things on the air that I've immediately had to retract. I've tweeted things that are wrong, and I'll either erase them or I'll flat out say, this is incorrect. I'm sorry. Here's the actual details, or just I was wrong. Did Derek Van Orden take down that tweet, even though he was probably told by hundreds of people, including someone maybe on his staff too? Nope. It's still sitting there.
Of course it is.
Misinforming the people. And I guarantee you there's somebody in this state, if not a couple, who walked up to their city, town, or village hall to vote. And when the doors were closed or they said you can't, they're going to go, see?
Oh, voter suppression, voter fraud,
Yep.
right?
Yep. So shame on you, Derek Van Orden, for one, not knowing the process, two, speaking incorrectly about the process, and then three, not correcting yourself after the fact.
Well, it kind of feels like MAGA means never having to say you're sorry or you made a mistake or anything ever.
That's exactly what it means.
Right?
That's exactly what it means.
Don't ever apologize. You just double down.
It's a sign of weakness.
To admit that you made a mistake.
Yeah. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to tell everyone to get out and vote today, especially in this weather. Make sure you bring an umbrella.
Bring an umbrella. And if you can get out and vote early, as earlier is going to be better because the weather is only going to get worse as the day goes on.
Yep.
And if you have any questions about your polling place or what you need to bring, or even if you want to get an early look at the ballot, which is a good idea, so you're going to be familiar with it once you walk into the voting booth, it's myvote.wi.gov. myvote.wi.gov. All you do is type in your address and everything comes up, and every race that will be affecting you.
Yeah.
And that we've talked about this before too, Greg. Primaries are super important just because of the effect locally.
Correct.
These are the school board. These are the school board elections. These are the judge elections. These are mayoral elections and other big, there's school referendums all over the state, including MPS with a big one. They're asking for $252 million. So it's much sexier to vote in November when it's the presidential election. And it seems like, that's the important one. And it certainly is. And this year more important than ever. But for things that actually affect your day-to-day life, the primaries are the ones where you really need to get out and vote.
Hey, Jane.
Yes.
It's always sexy to vote.
Voting is sexy.
And I will say one thing about this weather today. On a day like this, you might be discouraged to go and vote. And I understand that. But one, please go vote.
Yes.
I mentioned it yesterday in the morning. Please make a plan. If you need to bring somebody with you, if you want to, reach out to elderly people, offer them a ride. But more importantly, myvote.wi.gov will give you information on how to get ballots in the mail for future elections. So you can actually sign up online and they will send you absentee ballots in the mail for the remaining 2 elections for this year. So that way you don't have to worry about this kind of weather, especially as we hit those colder months. So I talk about this website all the time. It's so good.
It is. It really is. It's extraordinarily useful. Again, it gives you the names of all of your elected officials and all the contact information for them, which is important. And we've talked to enough people now, Greg, I think that if they hear from their actual constituents, assuming someone at the office will pick up the phone, and you are respectful.
Yes.
That's really, really important.
Yes.
We don't want badly behaved people shouting and screaming at our elected officials. But that makes a difference. If they hear from enough of their constituents, it makes a difference and can actually cut through. So
thank them for their time. And also, just as another thing too, when you go to the polling place today, everybody who's there is giving their time, sacrificing their time, and they're doing it for an important thing, and that's your right to vote. Thank them. From the person who tells you which line to get into to the person who gives you your I voted sticker.
Yep.
Thank every single person for what they're doing, and it means the world to them.
And especially nowadays.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Especially nowadays with
God.
all of the heat and the unfair attention on our poll workers and elections officials, it would mean a great deal, I'm sure, for folks to hear from you and just say thank you for what they do, because without them too, democracy isn't going to work.
No, who would have thought? Who would have thought? pension lady, like election worker, 80 years old, just handing out ballots. That's you are trying to step on our elections, Doris. It's like no occupation is safe from the anti-woke like wave of misinformation.
Yep. Get out and vote. You have until 8:00 tonight. And again, especially in the Fox Valley area and in central parts of Wisconsin, they're talking about a fair amount of snow. So as the day goes on, the winds are only going to get nastier and the rain is going to continue. And then in some places start turning over to snow. So get out early if you can. We started off this segment talking about Derek Van Orden, encouraging everyone to vote absentee yesterday, even though you can't do that.
Yeah.
Whoops. Dave from Waukesha texting in, how many drinks did Derek have before tweeting that? Over under at 4.5.
Yeah, it's a Monday morning. You want to keep it profesh on a Monday morning. He also, actually, it's a different Dave. We got two Daves, one in Waukesha and one in New Berlin. He said, good morning. These referendums/amendments seem to be relitigating Citizens United. I sent this same question to Dan O'Donnell, and he didn't respond. I'm more liberal than conservative. We hated Citizens United. Conservatives loved it. Don't you think it would be hypocritical for us to vote yes? A yes vote would be get rid of Uline money too. Well, we want you to vote no.
Yeah, we want you to. I would suggest.
I'm voting no.
I am voting no on the two referendum. If you have questions about it, we're going to rerun our conversation with Deb Cronmiller from the League of Women Voters. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Swing man, she can't have. She don't mean no.
Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Sweet Cal B coming to you from our studio in downtown Waukesha. If you want to join us, 855-75-CIVIC. Call or text 855-752-4842. You can always leave a comment on the live stream as well on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter. Coming up in just a little bit, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio is going to be joining us after the bottom of the hour news. So stay tuned for that. We were talking about the two referendum that are on the ballot today.
Yeah, sorry. I was looking at the live stream being incredibly disrespectful. So, sorry. Yeah, if you're going to be in the live stream, keep it respectful, folks, because I will kick you out or ban you. So there you go. That's just a little moment away. I want to get back to the text message really quick from Dave in New Berlin. And please stick around if you can, Dave, and listen to the interview with Deb Miller from League of Women Voters, because she will explain it a lot better than I will. Voting no for these amendments, for these
Referendum.
referendum on the amendments. If you vote yes, you're not keeping Uline money out. It's I don't want to say it's a lie, but they're basically saying that we want to keep Zuckerbucks, we want to keep Mark Zucker's money out of elections. They're using him as an example. Local elections take outside money all the time through grants, through donations.
And primarily grants.
It's not unusual. It's not illegal. It's necessary in a sad matter of fact, because the state does not fund the elections the way it should. So when you're voting no, you're allowing these municipalities to apply for grants, which they would not be able to do if this became an amendment in the Wisconsin state constitution. It would go through, and if your municipality couldn't afford it, that's on them. They would have to find the money other ways. And that usually comes in the ways of raising fees, raising taxes, and making your life a little more miserable.
Or they just have to have fewer poll workers and fewer polling locations.
Exactly.
And all that stuff.
And that's what the other.
That's what the other, yes. And who can work for elections.
Correct.
So again, we're going to rerun this interview that we did with Deb Cronmiller from the League of Women Voters at 11:33. So if you still have questions about it, I highly encourage you to stick around for that. You can also listen to it as a podcast if you want to.
Yes, absolutely.
Go to civicmedia.us or go to wauk.com, and you can go to Matenaer On Air and find all the podcasts and do it that way as well. This is great. Jeff on the live stream says, I voted this morning and I brought an acquaintance that is legally blind. He's 45 years old. He never voted until he met me a few years ago, and I got him registered.
Jeff, that's
Good
fantastic.
for
We
you.
love that. Guess what, Jeff? We totally care.
Oh,
Boom.
yeah, absolutely. And John K., I also voted this morning, and I noted some new volunteers other than the usual crowd. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, a lot of these poll workers have been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And we've been trying to encourage people to do this and learn how to become poll workers.
Yes.
Because we can't expect Doris, who's been doing this since 1955, to do this forever.
Exactly. Tony Lone Tree, also she's number 38 in the city of Pittsville, voted no on both of the referendum, and everyone wants to do so. Everyone get out and vote. That's absolutely right. Get out and vote. And John K., you couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better myself. Those two questions are another snake in the grass tactic by the right. And it always is. It's always murky language that makes you question what's going on. And you never, if you don't get the information beforehand, you're going to sit in that booth going, I don't know what to do.
I'm so confused. Exactly. Texter listening here in Waukesha on WAUK, I voted this morning before work, and holy crap, these referendums are worded so poorly.
Yes.
At first glance, it seems like the title and the description contradict each other. They are intentionally written to confuse you. They are.
You also can ask for help at the polling place. They should be informed enough to be able to tell you what
this means,
what they mean, and you can ask for help if you need it. So
we can also talk a little bit more about this with Pat Kreitlow. He's going to be joining us on the other side of the news. And again, not to blather on and on and on about this, but if you still have questions about these two referendum, then stick around until 11:33.
Yes.
Deb Cronmiller will be here from the League of Women Voters. Another texter just came in. I voted no to the referendum questions. Thanks to all the information you provided. That is our pleasure, and really grateful that it helped you. I didn't understand it until we had Dan Schaefer on a couple weeks ago.
I mean, I whenever I see referendum, I get so nervous. I'm like, oh man, I'm not a lawyer. And I think it's important for shows like this and shows on this network to have guests who can break it down, because, on a day like today, some people might not answer them at all because they don't understand it. So if you're listening, thank you. And we want to make sure we get that information and clear it up, because we're first clearing it up for ourselves. Usually. Seriously.
I wish I was all knowledgeable. That just isn't the case.
Yeah.
And going back to the Zuckerbucks, most municipalities who received money from this charity that is run by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife applied for this money as grants.
Yes.
And it wasn't just Milwaukee and Madison. There were a number of municipalities from around Wisconsin that applied for this money. And again, this is to help them run their elections. And this was also related to what was going on in 2020. We were in the middle of a global pandemic, and they needed PPE, and they needed hand sanitizers, and there were other things that they needed to set up so that we could vote safely.
And if you lived in Milwaukee like I did at the time, they took all of our polling places and shrank them down to 5.
Yeah. People waited in line for hours. Hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, and they did. That's what happens when they try to make it harder for us to vote. We get out and vote.
Which was that was a really good thing to see. But again, just a reminder, and Wisconsin is among the better performing states as far as voter turnout is concerned, but we're still only at like 66 or 67%.
We can't pat ourselves on the back for that.
No, we got a long, long way to go. So if you haven't yet, get out to the polls, vote today. As Greg said, if you know someone who needs a ride, or like Jeff did, took an acquaintance who's legally blind.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful thing. So
Yeah.
make sure you get out and vote today. It is critically, critically important. My personal opinion, what's the undecided?
Uninstructed.
Uninstructed is a throwaway vote. I understand the outrage attached to that vote. That is not going to fix the mess that is happening in the Middle East.
It's not going to send the message you think it's going to send.
No, it's not. And it's going to only pave the way for a second Trump administration. And I can almost guarantee you that Donald Trump will not treat the Palestinian people with any compassion.
Correct.
All right. News is coming up next. And then when we return, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio will be here. Again, you can always call or text at 855-75-CIVIC. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air, coming to you across the Civic Media Radio Network.
Wash away my sorrow, take away my pain. Your love's coming down like rain. I feel it, it's coming. Your love's coming down like rain. I feel it, it's coming.
summers came and they went so fast. We got the boys of North drinking 30.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin coming to you live from our studio in rainy downtown Waukesha. You can always join the conversation, call or text at 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment on the live stream if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or the platform that Elon is ruining. Just a reminder, if you want, our Civic Media news team is really doing a great job curating news for wherever you are in Wisconsin. So if you want a daily updated newscast just for Hayward or Green Bay or La Crosse or Amory, you just want to go to your station like you would go to WAUK, and there's a little tab at the top, and you click that, and that will give you an update. Or just go to your local, go to civicmedia.us and find the banner to hear your Civic Media Local News Roundup podcast. And they're doing that every day. They're really doing a great job. Our guest, very excited to have him here. He is one of our rotating colleagues at Civic Media, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio. Good morning, Pat. How you doing?
Good. I couldn't figure out if I was supposed to rotate to the left or to the right here, but I'm here
To
for
the
the
left,
moment.
to
To the left, to the left, to the left.
to the right, to the right.
Before you joined us, Pat, we were talking a little bit about highly mature individual and elected official Derek Van Orden for Wisconsin's third congressional district. And he was having a little tiff with our friend Dan Schaefer from the recombobulation area because Dan did a column about these two referendums that are on the ballot. And Derek Van Orden just insulted him and said, "What, can't people read?" And told him to go kick rocks.
Yeah.
So after I vote today, I'm going to go kick some rocks in honor of DVO.
And folks, all of you should. Hashtag kick rocks for DVO.
Yeah. Look, this would his little temper tantrum would be far more relevant. And this is to take nothing away from Dan. He does cover the whole state, but he's Milwaukee based and he's covering things mostly happening in Madison. If he were La Crosse based or Chippewa Valley or Central Wisconsin, I could see where the congressman from that side of the state would pay any attention to this. But because he saw it and felt the need to respond, it just shows you again, this is somebody who is not doing their job. He's got nothing better to do than sit on Twitter all day and post all kinds of rambling and insulting things that tell me again, he's not up to the job if he just wants to, carp on social media. Fine, anybody can do that. Let somebody else serve in Congress then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then to top it off, all off, Pat, he gave the wrong information yesterday and told people to go vote absentee, which ended on Sunday.
Yes.
Who can't read now?
I know,
Derek?
I know. It's just like,
Derek,
come
this
on.
is why your rag is failing. Again, Dan Schaefer doesn't have a rag. He has a website. He has a newsletter. Just a completely out of touch temper tantrum that was, I guess, just a huge unforced error. Because again, people are going to look at that. They're going to look at the totality of what he's done for the past few months and just say, "What's this guy doing?" And the answer, of course, is, at the moment, a big load of nothing. We even talked earlier this morning on Up North News Radio about there's a possible compromise involved that could make it easier for migrant farm laborers to get year-round agricultural visas. Those things don't exist right now, crazy as that sounds. And that would make our dairy industry so much more stable. Derek Van Orden's on the House Agriculture Committee. He could be a champion of this kind of thing, but because it's more effective for him to engage in xenophobia and immigrant bashing, he's wasting that seat on the House Agriculture Committee that could, again, show that he's interested in the job, not just, being a flamethrower on Twitter.
Pat, don't you understand that he is the first Wisconsin representative ever to sit on the Ag Council Committee? Do you show him respect?
No.
Or you kick rocks?
He's not. He is sitting in the seat once occupied by Steve Gunderson, and he is making a mockery in much the same way that Tom Tiffany is of Dave Obey's district. Dave Obey was first elected 55 years ago yesterday to the 7th District and gave us representation up here to be proud of. Steve Gunderson did the same thing, always always working to get the best deal possible for all the dairy farmers in Wisconsin. And this guy is just the polar opposite when it comes to respect and a work ethic.
Tim from Eau Claire is on the line. Good morning, Tim. Thanks for joining us. What did you want to say?
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. Well, I think I just read somewhere now that Van Orden is going to go to Israel. Why don't you just save the taxpayers the money and watch a little TV? He'd see all he needs to know.
Well, here's the thing.
That'd be a second. Yeah, go ahead.
He went to Israel when the hostilities first broke out. We talked about it for almost a week, that was when they dumped Kevin McCarthy as speaker, and when House Republicans needed every vote possible, and he basically went AWOL. Now, I haven't seen anything new that maybe indicates he's going, back to Israel or not. But again, this fascination with trying to look tough on foreign affairs rather than taking care of business at home, speaks volumes about the man.
It absolutely does. Texter listening on WRCE says Van Orden is just emulating Donnie. And I would imagine that Van Orden will be in Green Bay later on this afternoon when the former president is expected to make an appearance. We'll have to see what happens with this because the weather is not looking good for the Green Bay area.
Right. Yeah. This whole thing may not happen. And if it's weather related, that's fine. But again, it's just such an unusual choice anyway. For him to show up on election day, there are people who will probably go to the rally instead of voting, and they may have a close school board race in their district or something like that. Again, there's no rhyme or reason behind what they do except to get attention.
Please don't not vote.
Yes.
Please go vote today. We were talking before you joined us, Pat, again about how primaries don't get as much attention, but those are really the elections that directly impact your daily life.
It's a day exactly like this. I forget how many years ago now, where my wife and we were driving through. It was snowing, to beat the band. Where my old man bell should be ringing right now for old expressions. But it was snowing to beat the band to get to our town hall. And we said, why are we doing this when we can get an absentee ballot all the time and vote early? And so ever since then, we have gone to myvote.wi.gov. We've signed up to have absentee ballots automatically mailed to us throughout the calendar year. You have to do it once a year. And that way it could not be more convenient because you don't know when you're going to get weather or something's going to come up in your work life or your family life. Weather today is the best commercial possible to tell people, go get signed up now, because there's a primary in August for the November races, for like Congress here in the 3rd district, and maybe there'll be one yet for Senate Republicans. Get that now because you don't know in August if you're going to go vote in that primary or not. So get signed up and make it a habit.
They're looking at potential snow accumulations for over a foot of snow in Sturgeon Bay, between 10 and 11 inches in Appleton and Green Bay, could be 4.5 inches in Marshfield and Wausau. So NOAA has issued a winter storm warning for portions of the northeast and central Wisconsin, upgrading it from a winter weather advisory. So the earlier you can get out to the poll today, do it. The earlier is going to get better because, unfortunately, again, the weather is just going to keep getting worse.
And trust me, I used to love going to my town hall on election day. You get to see people that you know. It really feels like a slice of Americana. But what we do instead is we in-person absentee vote. We get that ballot, we fill it out, and then we take it to town hall so we can hand it directly to our clerk, so that we feel like we're part of that process without having to wait in a long line, without having any kind of hassle whatsoever. So you can still take part in all this. You can get the little sticker. My profile picture today is of a very young Pat Kreitlow with a little I voted sticker, as a photo frame. You can do that. You can take part in all of it with less of the rigmarole. Damn, I have a lot of old man expressions.
Ding, ding, ding.
If you're just joining us, Pat Kreitlow from Up North News Radio is our guest. You can hear him across the network and on many Civic Media stations weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. He's got the very early shift. And we're just talking about today is primary election day in Wisconsin. And the former president is scheduled to make an appearance in Green Bay. He hasn't been in Wisconsin for quite a while. President Biden now also just announcing on that he will be in Madison next Monday.
I think that's his 3rd appearance in like a month and a half.
Pretty much.
Yeah, he's been here quite a bit.
Yeah, and as far as, the presidential primary itself, you mentioned in the last segment about people voting undesignated or uncommitted or whatever the case may be. Yes, people are going to watch that. But the other thing that I'm going to watch, and I'm not saying it's going to be significant, but I'm curious, because a lot of Republicans will go to vote today for their local races and things like that, are they going to check the box for Trump? I would look very carefully at what Nikki Haley's final number is in Wisconsin, because remember, this is the place where 8 years ago, when it was a wide open primary, Trump lost Wisconsin to Ted Cruz. Trump never lost another primary after that, but this was like the last place where people said, I don't know about this guy. And you could see that reflected in the ballots today. And by the way, I would also highly recommend, Craig Gilbert has a long read in today's Journal Sentinel about that, about how Trump has so much less support among Republicans in the suburbs than he does out in rural parts of Wisconsin. That all came together while he was president. Those groups came together. But now that he's not president anymore, Craig writes that the indications are that, again, that divide is growing. And that's big trouble for Trump if he's again losing suburban voters.
Well, you can't continually alienate people and expect your percentage to grow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. He's doing nothing to grow beyond that base that is hostile, that is xenophobic, that loves the violent rhetoric, and he's hoping that is that's enough through force of will and, let's call it what it is, cheating, to get back into power. He's not looking to get in the old-fashioned way. He's never won a majority of the popular vote, and he never will.
He's also just using it to grow his bank account by begging for money.
Well, and there's a couple interesting articles exactly about that. Pat Kreitlow is our guest from Up North News Radio. The Washington Post is reporting that Republican Party officials have realized they put themselves at a big disadvantage when it comes to voting by mail. They have been screaming about fraud and vote by mail is all implicitly corrupt. And now they're like, yeah, this was probably not a good thing, and it's not working for us. Trump said earlier this month, quote, anytime the mail is involved, you're going to have cheating. It's too bad people don't say it. They don't want to say it. He also said mail-in voting is totally corrupt. If you have mail-in balloting, you automatically have fraud.
I think I hear that. Do you hear that, folks? Pat,
What's
Jane?
that? What is it?
Those are chickens coming home to roost.
Oh, yes, that's what it is. That's exactly.
Oh,
yes,
no!
Yeah. Look, this is, of course, he's still lying about, voting by mail. He repeated the lie a day or two ago that he won Wisconsin in 2020 when he did not.
Yes.
So, there's people that will cater to those delusions, but I think a lot of people will either not check a box up at the top of the ballot or, we'll look at the numbers for Nikki Haley and some of the other candidates who are still on the Wisconsin ballot.
We get a text coming in, a very good question, too, with regard to the weather and polling. It says, does anyone know if polls would close early because of the weather? I think for them to close, it would have to be catastrophic.
It would have to be like severe even. No, I do not foresee that scenario at all.
You should be safe.
And yet another reason to say thank you to those poll workers.
Oh, my good gravy.
Who are going to be there no matter how crappy the weather gets.
Yes.
And they're going to have to get home in that, too. So please be gracious today when you go and you cast your ballot.
And yeah, by all means, if you could be the next generation, to quote our old friend Kristen Bryan, one of her first videos was, work that poll. And she's trying to talk people into becoming the poll workers of the future. We need them.
Absolutely. Yeah, we sure do. All right. We will be right back. We're going to talk a little baseball. It is opening day. Greg is very, very excited. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Cold makes you grow a little stronger. And where I came from, they tell you, enjoy your youth while you're young. But I grew up and now it's gone. I'll write those stories in my songs to keep them burning like an ember. Pine trees remind me of December. New England taught me to be better. Growing up, I always remember where I came from and where I want to be.
welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, the surgeon of sound, Calvin, coming to you from our studio in rainy downtown Waukesha. Join the show, call or text if you want to chat, 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842, or leave a comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. It is a lousy day, which means it's opening day. For the Boat Brewers home opener.
You should work for the Brewers marketing department.
But this is what I remember going to back in the 80s when it was still County Stadium with no roof. Back in the day, Greg Bach, where's my old woman sounder?
No.
Kids, you listen to me. When I was your age, there was no sunshine. It was always rainy and dark.
Exactly. But
I went to an opening day at County Stadium when I was working for, at the time it was called Civic Media Group. It was the billboard company in town. Now they're out in Waukesha, but their building used to be right there on Wisconsin and 45th or whatever it is, right by the overpass over Miller Valley. So you could walk to the stadium. So we did that we had tickets for opening day. They were upper deck, left field, so you were exposed to all the elements. It was raw, and it was like you kept up a brave face because hey, baseball. But I can't say that I missed that.
No, I don't either, but it was a badge of honor, right, Pat? If you could survive like the lousiest opening day.
Yes, but I'd rather have the badge of honor one now is my little Brewers Hawaiian shirt here, with the little Brewer logo on it,
Very nice.
And as Greg is fond of hearing me say again from an old man standpoint, this little paper schedule that I found you get them at the liquor store, the grocery store, whatever. You can keep your interwebs if you want. I just need this little paper schedule to tell me everything I need to know. And I'm going to be there, especially for Yacht Rock Day is coming up later this summer.
Yacht Rock Day.
You can get a captain's hat on July 26th. And as the self-appointed king of Yacht Rock for Civic Media, I need that cap.
I got the Yacht Rock hat last year. It was the same. It was like a sailor's cap, and it didn't fit my big fat head. I gave it to a child.
I know Greg is going to the game this afternoon. And if you want to listen to the game here on Civic Media, there's a couple ways you can do that. Our coverage starts at 2:35. You can listen on News from the Center, WRCE in Richland Center, and WRJN in Racine, 99.9 FM and 1400 AM. If you want to listen to the Brewers and the Twins, we had a question for you, Greg Buck.
Carmela from Milwaukee, who was just sweet and lovely and wonderful. Thank you so much for reaching out. She texted, "Happy voting day, Jane and Greg," and I'll include Pat as well and Calvin. So happy voting day to everyone.
Thank you.
Greg, can you refresh my memory on how you became a Brewers fan? One of the first times I heard you on Civic Media, you told the story of your Milwaukee Brewers fandom. I'd love to hear it again in honor of the Brewers home opener. So if you knew me in 2016, you would have known that I was a staunch hater of baseball.
Really?
Oh my God. If you wanted to spin me up right away, just ask me about baseball, and you could leave the room and then come back and I'd still be talking.
Wow.
And I think it was because, I know what it was. And I mentioned this, we talked about it earlier. We didn't. We talked about a different Ken Burns documentary, but in Ken Burns Baseball, there's a gentleman speaking about the people who don't like baseball. And it's because he feels that those who don't like baseball aren't part of the club. And that's what I always felt like. I wasn't part of the baseball fandom. And then I realized you don't have to wait for an invitation. And I decided to stop being such an old grumpy man, ding, ding. And I went to a game in 2017, had a good time. Then I went to 2 more games that season. Then the next season I went to 6 games. And then that following season I went to 23 games.
Wow.
And it just became, and more importantly, it wasn't just something I really enjoyed watching. It's something I enjoyed learning about, but it also became a therapeutic thing for me. Going to a baseball game, sitting down, the grass, the players, the sounds, even going to a Cubs-Cardinals game is very stressful, but it's still fun. And I love it. I still love it. I'm so excited to go today. Even I know we have a roof, but even in the face of terrible weather, I cannot wait to see 2024 Brewers baseball, especially after they swept the Mets. Yeah.
Well, good. Welcome to the dark side. We like that.
The one thing I have questions about, though, is they're changing how the parking is going to run.
Yes, correct. So it's no longer when you would drive into.
Are we not going to have the crabby old guys pointing us in the right direction?
You will still have the crabby old guys.
Because they're iconic. Those guys are iconic.
Or as I like to call them, all of Pat's friends. You will still have the people leading you to the parking spot,
Okay.
but you will no longer have people outside of the parking area taking your money and giving you a ticket. It's now going to be freestanding machines. You'll register on an app and you'll get your information there. And they're expecting that just to make the parking experience go faster, less lines. But yeah, you'll still see those old guys who knew Hank Aaron and were like, I remember when it was the Braves.
That was always part of the experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so be ready for that. Although I was looking to park today, and I think I'm still going to take the bus because I don't want to walk.
In this.
I love the shuttles. The shuttles from the local watering holes there.
Mhm.
Those are great. I'll take
Yes,
those every
they're
time.
Fantastic.
Tony Zimmerman on a live stream when watching through the MLB app in between innings, they do a baseball Zen commercial.
Ooh.
And it's just the infield being cleaned and the sound of the bat hitting the ball. It's great.
I like that.
I seriously, the crack of the bat on a home run, there's few sounds that equal it.
Yes.
Just gives you the chills.
Yes, every time. Every time.
Although my favorite sound over the weekend was Mets fans, booing Rhys Hoskins, with increased fervor. And each time he would just get another hit or a stolen base or something. And it was music to my ears. It was a good first weekend.
Pat, are you going to today's game?
No, not to today's game, but I had to throw on my Brewer shirt just for the occasion. But I'll try to get down for at least 2 games, maybe more if time allows. But when I lived down there, obviously I'd try to get to as many as possible.
Well, now they have that ballpark app, the ballpark pass. It's called.
Right.
It's $35 a month, and it allows you to go. It allows you a standing room ticket, which you can get a seat for $35 every single home game during the regular season. If you use it like 5 times, it's paid for itself.
Paid for itself.
If you live in the area, it's so worth it. It's so worth the deal. I don't get it because I'm in Kenosha now, but I had it for 2 seasons and I loved it.
All right. Well, go Crew. They're taking on the Minnesota Twins at, I believe the first pitch goes out at 3:10. You can catch the game today starting at 2:35 on News from the Center, WRCE in Richland Center, and WRJN in Racine. Pat Kreitlow, the host of Up North News Radio, weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. Always such a pleasure, Pat. Thank you so very much.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thanks, Jane. See you, Greg.
Take care. News is coming up next. Don't go away. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Today.
welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin Butenhoff coming to you live from our very rainy studio in downtown Waukesha. You can always join us at 855-75-CIVIC. That's 855-752-4842. Or leave a comment on the live stream if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter. And keep it clean, folks, and be respectful, because otherwise we're going to ban you.
Yeah, I've been to.
It's just the way it works.
I have an itchy trigger finger.
We like people to get along and be respectful. So anyway, coming up at 11:33. In case you are wondering, today is primary election day in Wisconsin. It's very, very important that you get out and vote. There are 2 statewide referendum on the ballot for everyone in Wisconsin that will change the Wisconsin state constitution. And if you are confused about those referendum, and don't feel badly, many people are, and I certainly was before we had a chance to talk to both Dan Schaefer and Deborah Cronmiller from the League of Women Voters. And we talked to her last week about these 2 referendum, and we're going to do a rerun of that interview coming up at 11:33. If you still have questions about how you want to vote on those 2 referendum, it's very, very important. And the second question specifically has to do with election workers. Election officials say the second proposal could have especially unpredictable consequences because it seeks to ban anyone other than election officials from performing any task in the conduct of primary election or referendum. So how strict would this be? Does it mean they couldn't hire private companies to print ballots or put together voting machines, or other city workers? Can they not set up polling sites?
It sounds
No
like
one is sure.
Yeah, it sounds like if this went through, guess what? You're on your own. If
Mike-
you can't get the money, too bad.
Yeah, Mike Haas, Madison City Attorney and former administrator of the Wisconsin Elections Commission, says it's a very poorly written provision because it is so vague. Keep that in mind. That's by intent. It's vague because it's intentional, so that will give them more powers to clamp down on things to make it more difficult for us to hold free and fair elections.
And one thing I will say now, but in our replay of Deborah Cronmiller's interview, League of Women Voters Wisconsin always has great, helpful toolboxes on their toolkits on their website that helps them break down what's on your ballot and helps explain what's going on. And here's the weird thing is, even if you wanted to vote yes on these, if you read that, you might even say to yourself, oh, you know what I mean? Like, even though they're taking a certain standpoint, they want you to vote no. She's going to say to vote no. If you read that, you might be like, well, I disagree with that. Thank you for explaining to me. I'm going to vote whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's still a good place to go.
Absolutely. And at least be informed about what you're voting on.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to look at your ballot ahead of time before you head to your polling place, you can do that at myvote.wi.gov. Myvote.wi.gov will show you everything that is going to be on your ballot when you step in there. The polls are open until 8 o'clock tonight. We talked about this a little bit last hour, Greg. If you can vote early, do that.
Yes, please.
The earlier, the better, because the weather is going to continue to worsen. And the National Weather Service now is looking at snow accumulations over a foot in Sturgeon Bay, 10 and 11 inches in Appleton and Green Bay, 4.5 inches around Marshfield and Wausau. And the winds are going to be kicking up, and it's just going to become more lovely as the day goes on, she says facetiously. So get out to the polls. Earlier is going to be better for you.
And we mentioned
that's not possible for everyone, but
yeah, of course. And we mentioned earlier, if this kind of thing does discourage you from voting, the weather, then remember, going to myvote.wi.gov allows you to sign up for those absentee ballots that we sent to your house. You can fill them out, mail them out, and you can, for the rest of the calendar year, the 2 elections coming up, you can have ballots sent to your house, and you have to worry about, like Pat said, we have to worry about, like, personal life getting in the way, work life getting in the way, weather getting in the way. You've got those ballots. They're at your house. You can fill them out, and you're set and good to go.
Absolutely. All right. We did mention also last hour that the former president is going to be stopping in Green Bay, supposed to be holding a rally there about 5 p.m. tonight, with the weather being what it is. And that might be kind of at the peak of when the snow is coming down. We'll see whether or not Donald Trump makes it to Wisconsin. This would be his first visit here in quite a few years. And during an interview with a conservative radio host on Monday, Donald Trump said Wisconsin is one of the key states to winning. We've had great luck there. We've had some delayed luck.
Okay.
We had a great election, says Donald Trump. The second time, we actually did much better than the first time we won in Wisconsin. The second time, we did much better, but I guess it was delayed. They found out a lot of wrongdoing. And after the wrongdoing was found, people said, well, he actually did win. Yeah, no. No. Donald, you lost in Wisconsin by about 21,000 votes. Our favorite popcorn king, Robin Voss, Assembly Speaker, spent $2 million of our money to pay Michael Gableman to search for all this fraud. Michael Gableman had a good time. He got to go to Arizona. He went to the My Pillow symposium.
Doesn't love Arizona. Who doesn't want to go there on $2 million? And then what happened, Jane? What did Robin the Popcorn King Voss officially state about the election?
That it was a free and fair election, and that the people who are pursuing this recall against him because he allegedly did not do enough to prove that Donald Trump won here, he has called them what, morons and whack jobs
And stupid.
and stupid.
But that also begs the question: which recall effort? Oh my god, it's craziness.
It is crazy. Donald Trump, according to Brianna Johnson, communications director for the Biden-Harris campaign, says Trump has ignored Wisconsin for nearly 2 years and now is spreading the same lies that inspired a mob to assault police officers and try to violently overturn an election that he knows he lost. Trump is reminding voters he has nothing to offer but resentment, revenge, and retribution, with no vision or plan to make life easier for Wisconsin families. That last part, no vision or plan to make life easier for Wisconsin families, that could be applied to Eric Hovde.
Ooh,
But it could, he doesn't,
I
I
don't-
haven't seen one policy put forward by Eric Hovde, not one.
Oh, I did it. He tweeted recently, and he just said, "Close the borders, fix the problem." Boom.
Well, now that's done.
That sounds like Wisconsin. That sounds like a Wisconsin legislator who's
That
like,
was-
you know what, fixed it. I'm going to go home for 10 months.
Yeah, that was a well said.
You know, there's another word though you said in that statement, which is revenge, and I know it's just whatever. It's a piece of swag, but there's a gentleman who lives right by my mother-in-law who flies a flag. It's red and it says Trump 2024, the revenge tour. And you know, it's weird. I'd have so less of a problem if it just said Trump 2024. But when you say the revenge tour, that makes me think and know that you really don't care about Trump being elected. You care about just winning.
Oh, they care about getting back at those that they believe
Exactly.
are against them.
But it could be any dude then if they get their way. Like it's not about the man anymore. It's about the movement, and the movement has completely hypnotized them to the point where they think it's revenge. It's just this is not hyperbole. It sickens me every time I pass it.
And it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Something else that just popped this morning, again, before you head into your polling place, you may want to think about this before you cast your ballot. Robert Reich is reporting on Twitter that RFK Jr. says President Biden is a bigger threat to democracy than Donald Trump. So if you're going to cast a ballot for RFK Jr., I implore you to think very seriously about what that could mean.
I don't remember who called when we were when we were talking about RFK, and we were kind of making fun of him. And you know what? Someone called and rightfully, I don't want to say called us out, but said, you're doing a disservice to his other points. So he went on his website and looked at his policies. And granted, they're policies, they're words. You can say whatever you want,
Right.
but they're not bad, and they don't misalign with what I believe too. It's talking about, climate change. It's talking about fair housing. It's talking about jobs. It's talking about stuff that his father and uncle would be pretty proud of, I think.
Yes.
The problem is when you say things like that and you put it out in the world that you want to get Aaron Rodgers or Jesse Ventura as your VP, you are undercutting everything you're working for. And if you have other policies and if you have other intentions on being president and you want to help people, nobody cares about them now. You make yourself look like a whack job. And I hate that because I don't think he is. I think he's just playing. I think he's trying to play the game and he's losing really hard.
Well, it's important to keep in mind also, folks, that his own family
Yes.
has just, I mean, they've all said he is undermining the message of JFK Jr. and RFK.
Yeah.
Don't vote for him.
Yep.
And he is very anti-vax.
Yeah.
Very.
That's another. Like I said, I just think that he's done himself no service by saying the things he said and doing the things he's done. He's made himself just seem like a weirdo rich guy.
Our colleague here at Civic Media, Johnny Watermullen, is on the line. Good morning, Johnny. What's up?
Hey, I just wanted to call in and give you a little report about the voting down in Waukesha today. I just left there, Jane. It was just a wonderful experience. The staff there was so helpful. It was smooth. It was not crowded. It was in and out, man. It was a pleasurable experience. So I just wanted to let you and all the listeners know that.
That's wonderful, Johnny. What number were you? Do you know?
I was number 97. And because I moved to Waukesha just not too long ago, I had to fill out a little extra paperwork. But they were so helpful there, Jane. It was such a good experience. I mean, I can't stress enough for people to get out and vote today. It's easy. It was a great, rewarding experience.
Thank you so much, Johnny. That's really, really important and a great reminder, folks. Get out and vote. They're waiting for you. We really, really need everyone to participate. Let's kick that 66% turnout and really start getting those numbers up there. Earlier is better because the weather is going to get worse. All right, stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
She gets mad and she starts to cry. She takes a swing, man. She can't have. She don't mean no harm. She just don't know what else to do.
Change, change, change. 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 Change, change.
Good morning and welcome to Matenaer On Air. Thank you so very, very much for joining us. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Cal B on the board. You can always join us. Call or text at 855-75-CIVIC. That's 855-752-4842. Or leave a comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Elon is in the process of ruining.
But I can't leave it.
I know, I can't. It's a sickness.
Yeah.
It's just a sickness.
I agree.
Don't forget, if you ever want to email the show, easy way to do that. If you have a suggestion for a topic you would like us to cover or something going on in your community or a nonprofit that you would like to get a little more love, you can always send your emails to Jane Says at civicmedia.us. Jane Says at civicmedia.us. And the complaints you can just, as always, send to Calvin. It is opening day for the Brewers. They're going to be hosting the Minnesota Twins. First pitch going out about 3:10. Our coverage on Civic Media. If you want to listen to the game, the home opener for the Brewers, you can catch it on News from the Center, WRCE in Richland Center, and also WRJN in Racine, 99.9 FM and 1400 AM. So again, that's the Brewers Twins game. Catch it on the Civic Media
Nice.
Radio Network.
See what you did there?
Oh, I
Catch it.
yeah, I completely planned that out. That was
Woo.
all right.
Baseball.
We've been reminding folks that the weather is going to continue to get worse as the day goes on. So if you can, get out to your polling place early, especially if you are around Sturgeon Bay. They're looking at 10 to 11 inches in Appleton and Green Bay, a foot in Sturgeon Bay, 4.5 around Marshfield and Wausau. So if you have an opportunity to get to the polls early, please do so. And former President Donald Trump supposed to be making a stop in Green Bay. We'll see if that actually happens now with this weather. I'm sure he would like to because he's having a hard time with money.
But Jane, didn't he just sell Truth Social Twitter thing for like a bunch of money? Or like he's rich.
Not so much.
Are you telling me that even if you go public, that doesn't mean you become a billionaire?
Early investors in the Trump Media and Technology Group tell Reuters they made quick money by cashing out late last week, just before the Truth Social financial report came out, and sent the share prices into a free fall yesterday.
I'm going to go check it.
A 21-year-old man, an investor, a data analyst from the UAE, rushed to invest in Truth Media stock as soon as it became available because he believed he could get Trump supporters to pay premium prices for a stock he believed was wildly overpriced. And it paid off. He bought up shares when they were trading at $37 a piece, sold them off last week when they went up to $65. He said it was a no-brainer. You buy the stock, wait for his fan base to hear about it, and enjoy your profits.
I mean, just to be clear, the stock didn't come crashing down. It peaked at 74.50, and that's fine. That I'll take that. I'll take 7 million shares in with this.
Sure.
And right now the value's at 50.60. It's going up and it's going down. Now, does that mean it's going to stay like that forever? Probably not. I mean, the way that the way that anything he does is managed, it's going to come crashing down, or it's going to be shut down by the government because of whatever kind of nefarious activities. But like, I mean, $50.59 stock, that doesn't look too bad to me.
No, that's not terrible.
He's still got money.
He does. But still, when the financial report came out about Trump Media, it lost $58 million in the last year.
Yeah.
And generated just over $4 million in revenue.
Because there's not that many people on that.
Those are
website.
not good numbers.
No.
Those are not promising numbers. Also not promising numbers. A new report says Donald Trump's small dollar donations have seen a big trend downwards. Trump raised $51 million from small donors last year compared to $626 million raised in 2020. Republican small donor dollar fundraiser John Hall says the biggest problem in GOP fundraising is that we don't treat donors well. Sending 8 emails and texts a day promising an artificial match, threaten to take away your GOP membership, or call you a traitor if you don't donate does not build a long-term relationship with donors. Yeah, yeah. Let's not forget also that one of the last times around, people who were making donations to the Trump campaign were automatically enrolled to do this monthly.
Oh, that's right. They took their information.
They took their information and they automatically enrolled people monthly. And if you didn't click out of that box, they were doing automatic withdrawals from people, from his own supporters.
I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but this sounds like the kind of thing that Scientology does to people, where if you don't give, they get in your face and they make you feel awful until they make you cave. And then that's it. You are maxing out credit cards and signing up for credit cards and that's just criminal. And yeah, of course the small dollar ones have gone down. The shine is gone. He has gotten worse. That's why we have people like Ethan from Wisconsin on the show, from Republican voters against Trump. There's only so much people can take and they're done, especially from a guy who just apparently made billions of dollars on his stock.
Right. Again, this small dollar fundraiser, John Hall, in this article says he believes Trump's small donor boom slowed last year because donors had been sent too many messages guilting them into donating. Hall added that people being duped into donating to candidates they didn't know also played a role.
Oh, that just feels like a crime that will never be prosecuted.
I do believe that in the instance of where people were signed up for these automatic draws,
Yeah.
they got refunded their money.
Good.
I'm fairly certain.
Good.
I'm fairly certain that at least they got refunded their money. But yeah, you would think that would burn a lot of people.
It would just make, I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't vote for them, because I see individuals who are burned all the time by this guy and they still vote for him. But yeah, that's just shady and awful.
It is Election Day. It is also Brewers Home Opener Day. And speaking of Election Day, there are two referendum on the ballots that would change the Wisconsin state constitution. If you have questions about what those referendum mean and what the effects would be, I highly encourage you to stick around. We have news coming up next. And then when we return, we're going to replay a conversation we had with the League of Women Voters. Deborah Cronmiller joined us last week with a great explainer about these referendum. So stay close. That's on the way next. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
Change, 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 change. Change, change,
good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvin B. coming to you from our studio in downtown Waukesha. Join the show, 855-75-CIVIC. Leave a comment on the live stream if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter. There are two referendum on the ballot today that would change Wisconsin's constitution. Very, very important measures, and they've been very confusing. We've been talking about it quite a bit in the last couple of weeks because they are intentionally written to be murky. So here's an opportunity to clear this up. If you are unsure about how you want to vote on these referendum, this is Deborah Cronmiller from the League of Women Voters. We had a chance to speak to her last week. We're going to rerun it now right here on Civic Media. Very excited to have our next guest join us. We've had a lot of questions about this. And as a matter of fact, Deborah, we just had a caller ask when we were going to talk about these two referendum that are going to be on next Tuesday's ballot. So delighted to welcome Deborah Cronmiller. She is the executive director of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining us, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Well, let's talk about these two referendum, and we have talked about them a little bit before with other guests. It's my contention that these are intentionally written as murky as humanly possible to confuse people so they don't know what it actually means. So I'm going to just read this first referendum, and then we'll pick that apart a little bit if that's okay. Number one, the use of private funds in election administration. Shall Section 7.1 of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that private donations and grants may not be applied for, accepted, expended, or used in connection with the conduct of any primary election or referendum. So this, I'm assuming, is referring to some outside money that came in to help administer the elections in 2020 when we were in the midst of the COVID pandemic.
Correct. I think it is a response to that. I think it's also kind of circled into some of what we know to be misinformation about how this money was used in 2020. We were in a new and very different place in 2020 with the pandemic.
Yep.
And we had the consolidation of many polling places. We had, a lot of different needs that clerks had never had before. They had to have a lot of protective equipment for that election. They had to have sanitizer, plexiglass shields, that sort of thing. We know when they, in some areas where they actually reduced the number of polling places, they needed more equipment in those polling places so that they could mitigate the number or the length of the lines so the voting experience wouldn't be a horrible one. Yet in Milwaukee, we saw lines that went around the block, and it was just horrible. The monies that came from the Center for Civic and Tech Life were Civic Tech and Life are they're grants that are made to municipalities, and they have terms. And the terms are that you can only use their grant dollars for nonpartisan purposes. So things like the administration of the election, they could buy equipment, they could pay poll workers, they could get all that PPE that those polling places needed. What they could not do with the money by contract was use it for any partisan purpose. So there was no way a municipality could have tried to turn out voters of a certain party. So there was no partisanship in these dollars. And I think that some of the misinformation that we're hearing is that because larger grants went to Milwaukee and Madison, communities that have self-selected to be a little bit more liberal, that clearly this was some way to turn out the Democratic vote, when in fact 200 municipalities in the state of Wisconsin accepted grant dollars, some in the most conservative areas of our state. And our clerks took those dollars because they needed them to administer their election. It was not about political motivation. And so I think we need to separate the truth from the falsehoods and really make sure that people understand that, one, elections cost money. Two, there's not enough state and federal money to go around to cover the cost of these elections. Outside money has been a part of election administration for years, even long before 2020. And without this money, or without a guaranteed source of other monies, taxpayers are going to cover this cost. And I think none of us want our tax bills to go up.
Or we're just going to have much longer waits and much longer wait times, right? And the whole voting process is going to become more of a pain in the neck. And I think,
Correct.
as you said, Deborah, there is this misinformation that this money only went to Milwaukee and Dane counties. And I don't know, as you said, there are very specific requirements as to how this money can be used. So it's not like they're giving these dollars to the election commission and then they're printing up flyers on behalf of one candidate or another. That's not what the money goes for. It's, as you said, it was for PPE. People forget. Remember where we were 3 years ago at this time? We were standing 6 feet apart. We couldn't find toilet paper in the stores. As you said, Deborah, election clerks were dealing with a situation they had never dealt with before. And I had no idea that outside money has always been involved to some extent in running our elections, because there's so much attention on
Municipalities,
Mark Zuckerberg. It's all Mark Zuckerberg's fault. And no, but that's not true.
municipalities accept outside money to do lots of things, to support their libraries, to do their forestry work, to, and elections dollars, when they're available, municipalities can apply for those as well. Kind of creating a wholesale, no, you can't accept any money for this one purpose of government. It seems, targeted and wrong. It just seems wrong. We do not need this to be in our Constitution. The legislature had an opportunity to put said language into law, and that probably is exactly the right place where it should be, is in statute, if they want it to be there. The governor vetoed that bill. And, there's a League of Women Voters, an organization that's, been advocating for good government, transparent government for 104 years now. This looks to us like a trying to usurp the executive branch's authority and take it onto the legislature. The legislature had its chance to do this through regular lawmaking processes. It failed. They did not have the votes to override the governor's veto. And now they're trying something else. And that something else is putting this in the form of a constitutional amendment in front of the voters, which, if you listen to some people who are advocating a yes vote on this particular amendment, they're saying that's where it should be. The voters should decide. Well, that's not good government. We have processes for putting these sort of policies into law. Those processes didn't work because our lawmakers couldn't agree. And that's that doesn't mean you change the process. That means you don't get the law.
Well, and it's essentially, well, we didn't get what we wanted through the regular channels, so we're going to invent a new way to get what we want anyway, and put this as a referendum that is poorly worded to confuse people.
It seems like an emergency break glass almost situation.
If you're just joining us, Deborah Cronmiller is our guest. She's the executive director of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, and we're talking about the two referendum that will be appearing on your ballot statewide next Tuesday on April 2nd when we head to the polls for the primary. It almost seems, Deborah, that some people want to make voting much more difficult.
Yeah, we think that this could potentially have that ramification if enacted, which is why we're asking for a no vote. If voters do have to wait longer, if there's less, up-to-date equipment, or fewer, the second question of all of this, fewer people involved in the mix to help support our valuable clerks, what does that do to the voters? What does that do to their voting experience? And when voting experience starts becoming less and less a positive one, do folks stay home? And that's the sort of advocacy that the league has been doing for many, many years. We want everyone to have access to the ballot. It needs to be as simple as possible. It needs to be, the least number of barriers to ensuring that your vote is going to count. And this just looks like we're standing up some additional hoops to jump through and making it harder for our clerks. We all know through all the polling evidence, people like their clerks. They trust their clerks. Our clerks are our neighbors. Our poll workers are our friends.
Yep.
We know that the elections in Wisconsin have strong integrity. And by putting in some of these not necessary constraints on our elections, do we break down some of that?
We're talking to Deborah Cronmiller, who is the executive director from the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. We've talked about this many times, Deborah, about we should be embarrassed as a country and as a state on how low our voter turnout is. That must make you crazy when you see like 66%. I guess it's better than 46%, but the goal is to get people out. And this election is going to be more important than any in our history.
Yeah.
Seriously, we cannot encourage enough people to get out and vote.
Correct. Every election is important, especially spring elections. Spring elections have on the ballot our judicial races, our municipal races, the school board races, your local referendum question. And these are the things that impact your life every single day.
Directly.
Yes.
Who sits on your city council? Who sits on your county boards? These are the folks who are deciding everything that happens in your locality. And, every voter should feel compelled to come out and say, this is the county board member I want. This is the city council member I want. This is the mayor candidate that shares my values. I want to make sure that person is running my city. These are the really rubber meets the roads elections. And it's always been a confusion to me and all the league members why we don't come out for them. This is the big time. Presidential elections happen every 4 years. A lot of stuff gets done at the federal level, as we all know. But what really impacts our lives every single day is what happens at the local level.
Absolutely.
That's
Yes.
such an excellent point, Deborah. It really is. These are even more important than the presidential election, just in terms of what this means for your day-to-day life and what it means directly in your community as opposed to across the entire country. So yes, get out and vote on Tuesday. It's really, really
Yeah.
important. Do you have time to stay for a second segment? Because I don't know that we'll be able to cover this whole thing. I'll set up the question before we go to break. This is the second referendum question that will be on next Tuesday's ballot. Election officials. Shall Section 7.2 of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that only election officials designated by law may perform tasks in the conduct of primaries, elections, and referendums? Now, when I read this, it makes it sound like I can pull Bill in from off the street and have him give advice. That's not accurate.
No, well, we're all kind of confused what this actually is. In the statutes that currently exist, election officials are defined very clearly. What we're fearful of is that by codifying that, statutory language in the Constitution, we create opportunities for confusion. And that confusion might end up being litigated in courtrooms across Wisconsin as to whether or not, the League of Women Voters, who published a voter's guide that printed some information about what candidates are on your ballot and how to find a sample ballot, we're not defined in the statutes. Was that now a prohibited activity?
So they could.
We just don't know answers to questions like that.
So there could be litigation then
Yeah.
if someone wants to come after the League of
Absolutely.
Women Voters. Yeah, this seems like a bad idea. That is Deborah Cronmiller. She's the executive director of the League of Women Voters. We are replaying a conversation that we had last week, especially importance. Today is primary day in Wisconsin. These two referendum that we're talking about with Deborah are on the ballot. The second half of our conversation right after this. Stay close. This is Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
much for joining us. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Gavin Butenhoff coming to you from our studio in downtown Waukesha. It is primary day. The polls are open. You have until 8 p.m. tonight to cast your ballot. Please, please vote. It is critically important. Two big referendum on the statewide ballot today that would change the Wisconsin state constitution. We're rerunning a discussion we had last week with the executive director of the League of Women Voters, Deborah Cronmiller, explaining what those two referendum mean and what it would mean if they pass. Here's the second half of this conversation on Civic Media. So glad to have our guest with us. She is the executive director of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. Deborah Cronmiller is here to kind of break down the two referendum that are going to be appearing on next Tuesday's ballot when you head to the polls on April 2nd. The second question, again, Deborah will recap a little bit. Election officials, they will make a special article in the Constitution that only election officials designated by law can perform tasks in the conduct of primaries, elections, and referendums. And as we were saying before the break, this kind of sets it up for even organizations like yours to be in the crosshairs of someone if they determine that you are not an election official.
That's correct. And because it's so vaguely written, it's difficult to, ascertain whether or not all of the different supportive players to our elections and our election officials would be allowed if this were enacted. And so what we know is the league's involved with poll worker recruitment, as are other organizations. The league's involved with getting people to the polls, offering rides through our collaboration with Lyft. And Vote Riders does the same work in municipalities around the nation. These are not actions or activities that are defined in statutes and would not be codified in the Constitution were this to pass. So now the question becomes, if it's not in there, does that make it not allowable? And that we're concerned about that. And we're concerned because our clerks have always accepted support. If the machine that is in the polling place on election day, fails to accept the ballot, something's wrong with it, they call in a technician from the company. That person's not defined as an official election worker.
Sure.
Are they allowed to come into the polling place then? Are they allowed to fix that machine? There's just too many questions here. And I think with all those outstanding questions, we have no choice but to vote no.
And once again, it just feels like there is a certain group of people who want to make it as difficult and uncomfortable and as murky as humanly possible. And that doesn't seem very pro-democracy, at least to me.
We agree. And but the reality is, I think what we also agree on is, clerks are so important to everyone in a community. They help really make sure that our elections are safe, secure, accountable. They certify results. They send their results to the counties to be certified. They send it to WEC to be certified. Everything has a paper trail. We know it all works. It's like we're fixing a problem we don't have. And I always am concerned about why we do that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I said to Jane earlier was, when the group of people who are doing this get their way, they make it harder for the people even who vote for them. They make it harder for everybody. This doesn't just affect one group of people.
You're absolutely right.
This affects the entire electorate, and there are going to be plenty of people who are going to say, I was going to vote for so-and-so, but I'm not going in today because I don't want
to wait 3 hours.
I got to wait 3 hours. I got to do that. No, and they're going to, it's not advantageous. And as you said earlier, if the law couldn't make it happen, don't put it in the Constitution, because this could also backfire on the group who put it forth one day as well. It's, as usual, not very well thought out.
Mm-hmm. And amending our Constitution is a big deal.
Yes.
We've had a Constitution in place for over 150 years. We've amended it 148 times. And most of those amendments, or half of them basically, were to undo a prior amendment because it wasn't well thought out. It was perhaps a policy or a social issue that never had a place in the Constitution to begin with. And that's what we think about these two questions and this constitutional amendment. It does not belong in our Constitution. It's a policy. It's about how to administer our elections. This can be done at the election administration level through the Wisconsin Election Commission. It can be done through legislation. Certainly does not need to be done through constitutional amendment.
Well, and yet again, I go back to yet another example of one group not being able to get something done, going through the correct channels. So they come up with a different way to go around it to see if they can get their way that way. And with the language that's used in these referendum, it's intentionally murky. It's confusing. The issue, at least from me, from my perspective, I'm going to vote no on both of them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's what we're advocating. And the electorate should be aware that this is actually a more complicated situation than it appears on its face. Not that it's not complicated enough, but the questions that are on our ballot and what should happen in the Constitution, the language change in the Constitution is actually different than the language change that we're seeing on our ballot. And for all of these reasons, it's not transparent. It doesn't seem, or it doesn't feel good. And, I think we've discussed the motivations for it certainly are to make voting more accessible.
No.
I think the motivations are to suppress certain individuals from voting, or worse, create some sort of false narrative around the integrity of our elections, which we know are of very high integrity.
If you would like to find out more, Deborah, if someone is listening and that they'd like to learn more about the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, where can they get in touch with you?
Sure. You can always find more information about us on our website, which is lwvwi.org. We actually have a toolkit on why to vote no. You'll find that in our section on our navigation bar, toolkits and resources. And the toolkit is a Vote No toolkit.
We will get that in our show notes once we put the podcast up afterwards. Deborah Cronmiller, the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, thank you so very much for your time. This has been really, really informative.
Thank you so much.
We do thank Deborah again for joining us last week, and I hope this was helpful for you as we head out to the election. Stay with us. We have news on the way next. You're listening to the Civic Media Radio Network.